I have CompanionCube here, fellow YouTuber,
Mm.
super famous.
Yep, I'm
Not
way up
really.
there.
He's a loser. But he's here. We're going to talk real quickly about. I say real quickly. That just means like 30 minutes, companion.
30 minutes?
At
I'm not going to
best.
be able to waffle on for 30 minutes
I
about
at
that.
best. That's what but we're going to talk about the Dead Linger because companion. Why don't you say what recently has happened?
Well, about it was okay. It was a blog post on the Dead Lingers website by GF King, which is like the lead project designer behind the Dead Linger, and in it, the first line reads, "This is one of those blog posts that nobody wants to write, and that most of you don't want to read. Bear with me." And he basically says that they're putting the development of the Deadlinger on an indefinite hiatus. So it's basically dead in the water, and it's done for. It's
Yeah.
it's basically the overview of it.
They ran out of money, and they're done with the project, and it's kind of shitty because not only did they have a Kickstarter for it, but they were selling the alpha on Steam. I think it was $20, maybe more.
Yeah, it was about that.
Um, and this is all done by Sandswept Studios. It's no secret; they're not hiding it. So,
Hmm.
um,
Which I
and
appreciate.
it's a sucky situation for the consumer because it's like it had two different types of funding and nothing came of it, other than an incomplete game that's quite honestly a kind of a mess.
Oh, I think they actually pulled it. You can't buy it anymore on Steam.
Really?
Oh shit! Because yeah, it dropped down from $20 to $5 when they posted this announcement, and now I don't see anywhere to buy it on Steam. So
I don't see why Valve would remove it.
maybe they removed it, which I would find admirable of them if they. But yeah, no, it's really sad that this project that I've been looking at for the past 2 years about at this point, right around the time when I was first getting into my channel really hard, is dead, and basically we're probably never gonna see it again.
Yeah. So, basically, what the Dead Linger was another zombie survival game. It was released about I think 2 years ago. Was like the beginnings that it was released in.
Hmm.
It was going to be this big open world, procedurally generated, crazy thing that focused a little bit more on cooperative play over PvP. So it's going to be, taking advantage of a slightly different market than DayZ and Rust and whatever other games. Um,
Yeah.
but it didn't happen. They switched engines about a year into development, and they just had too big of plans for the game. And they were
Well, I
just
mean, initially they switched engines from their first initial engine, and then they switched it over to Unity, and then they tried going with the procedural generation aspect throughout both of those engines, but then they decided to switch from Unity, which was already one engine change, to Unreal Engine 4, so that was another engine change. So they had to like port their content twice
yeah,
from different engines, which is a huge undertaking and just ate up so much development time. And they also ditched the procedural generation for a main stake map
yeah.
too.
So they had a giant goal in mind. They switched engines two times. Um, they they didn't have an experienced staff. They didn't
Yeah.
have a skilled staff, and that's no knock on them. It's not saying like, okay, well these guys are shit and they should never make a game. That's just saying they're not a freaking, they're not the guys who make Assassin's Creed. They're not like these talented veterans who know every in and out of game design.
I mean, they say that too for themselves on their blog post, their final blog post titled "The Final Word,"
Yeah.
and they say that they've learned from this transition with the Deadlinger, and they hope to bring it into future projects. But they're probably going to be seeking funding for new developments and new games that they're going to make. You gotta wonder if this just is going to destroy their reputation.
But I don't know. See, that's one of the interesting things that I kind of wanted to hit on at the very end here. But before we get into like their reputation and the aspects of that, I kind of wanted to talk about like the overlying effect that this can kind of have onto both Greenlight and Kickstarter, and it's already been kind of talked about and documented, so this shouldn't take too long. But
Okay.
um, just it's once again, this is another one of those projects that came with so much hype when it first came out, when it was first started, and it it's basically just shit on a bunch of people's hopes and dreams, to put it bluntly.
Like
Um,
mine.
it completely amounted to nothing. The game isn't truly. I would say it's not even playable. Like it's not anything that they wanted it to be. Um, and it was made by these developers who weren't capable of making it. Um, and it went through Kickstarter and went through Greenlight. Um, People bought it, paid for it, and just nothing happened. It never got out of alpha.
Yep.
Like
In
this is
fact, I'm pretty sure during their second engine change from Unity to Unreal Engine 4, they said, like, we've used half of our funding already, over half of our funding, just trying to get the procedural generation aspect for it. So they were shooting for stuff in the sky that they didn't know how to do exactly, and their money just ran out. And do you think that Dead Linger is going to really have that much of an impact on Kickstarter and Greenlight?
I think this is going to have an impact on the consumer market, where people are going to be at least a slight bit more, you know, careful with their money, because this just keeps happening. You know, we keep having these games that don't get released, or that aren't released in the playable state, or aren't delivering on all their promises. And I think that it's going to teach people, like, not only to be a little bit less trusting of these things, but more importantly, to really look at the development team that's making the game. Because in the Dead Linger's case, we knew going in, everyone should have known going in, no one really thought of it, is that these guys weren't that skilled. They weren't these long-standing veterans. They had a very, very lofty game, and to a consumer, it should have been, they can't do this. Like, no matter how much money we give them on Kickstarter, they're not going to be able to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, open world sandbox games where you build barricades and houses, for God's sakes, are pretty. You would imagine they would kind of be on a par with MMOs and stuff like that in terms of development cost and development time, because you have so much content that you have to put in.
You know, it's a huge undertaking, and I think that it's going to just make the consumer just a little bit more disconcerting about stuff. And I think it's also going to set up kind of a little, not really a bias, but a thought process of what's the actual timeline for this game. Because I think consumers are a little bit more just kind of tired of waiting 2 years for a game to come out. Like, I don't think they're going to be as willing to drop money on a game that's going to take 2 years to come out.
Yeah, how many zombie survival horror games are in that vein where you craft stuff are actually out of early access? The only one that comes to mind when I try to think of it is Don't Starve, and that's like the only one. Can you think of anything else?
Is DayZ technically out?
Nope, that
I
is
thought
definitely not out.
I thought they said it was like I don't know, maybe it's Rust.
No, no.
Then no, I can't think of any. Well, Project Zomboid is touting that it's technically done, but we all know that Project Zomboid isn't done.
No, DayZ isn't out. Let's see if Rust is out. Nope, they're both still in early access.
Yeah, and then I can't think of any. I guess, yeah, Don't Starve is the only one, and even that, it's like that's still getting developed on constantly.
Yeah,
It's
you're damn right
playable
it
though.
is.
That's the thing. It is completely a 100% game.
And it has the multiplayer feature going in there too.
Yeah. So that is the only one I can think of, and that's not zombies. So, but that's still in that same vein. So
This will just serve as another reminder to be hesitant about early access games and greenlight games and all that.
yeah,
But it's a weird cycle too, because some of these games, if they might need people to fund them to actually get out of early access, otherwise they just end up dead in the water. Like, maybe if the Dead Linger had more funding, then they could have continued on with developing the game, but then again, would they have just blown half their budget again trying to shoot for something that they couldn't go for?
yeah. So and that's a problem because yeah, like they some of these games aren't going to be made if they don't have money. Like that's 100% just not they're not going to happen. But how are they supposed to get money if the consumer doesn't want to give that money up?
Exactly, because then we'll get burned like we have been with the
Yeah.
space-based DF9 and now the Dead Linger and countless other early access games.
So it's kind of a vicious, I guess, cycle. I don't know where we've kind of been screwed over by certain games, and it's just bad.
And Towns as well. That was also a pretty popular example.
I mean, some people will point to games like Minecraft, Don't Starve, and some of the other early access games that are at least semi-playable, and say like these games are good. This is why I invest in these things. But there are so many bad examples too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a weird situation.
I do admire their straightforward and ownership of their horrible mistakes that they've made.
Yeah, so that's probably what we should talk about now. Is Sandswept Studios.
You're
And,
dying.
yeah, I
Should
know.
probably take
I
care
don't
of
know
that.
what's up with this. We should. I think we should talk about Sandswept Studios and the what's going to happen to them going forward, and what kind of maybe we should talk about the situation though with their funding a little bit, just to say like apparently people weren't getting paid. They didn't have they didn't have the staff they wanted. People weren't getting paid, so that's probably a bad thing too. Just throwing that out there real fast. But let's talk about how what Sandswep's going to do going forward and stuff like that. They only have one other game out as far as I can tell, and that's Detour.
Detour. Yep.
Yeah, which that's not promising for them to build a reputation off of.
So they've got like this kind of casual game, and then they've got a not even half or a fourth finished open world survival sandbox game.
And the casual Detour game is only at a 65% like
Oh,
people liking it. So it's not like even a game that's kind of really getting people's attention. Um, so that kind of really sucks. So for I think it's very admirable that Sandswept said, "Look, we're owning up to the fact we fucked up. Um, not only did we fuck up, but we're not going to change our name. We're not going to go pretend this never happened. We're going to stay Sandswept Studios, and we're just going to, own up to the fact that, yeah, we screwed up this game. We wasted people's money and time, and it sucks. Like, that's a pretty big deal.
they also say that they're not going to move the Dead Linger into finished or version 1.0 and call it good and done because it's not.
Yeah. Which is also like a awesome thing. 'Cause they're not trying to say, like, oh, look, the game, we did it.
Like what I think space-based DF9 actually did, or Towns as well, which are two examples that I can only think of that,
Yeah.
the people made.
So I think it's a pretty good show of faith, but in the consumer, but it's not going to be reciprocated. The consumer is certainly not going to say, "Oh, that's cool. I forgive you guys." I think the general consumer is going to say, "Fuck you, Sandswept," and not pay attention to them, and
Because
that's bad.
what are they going to do here yet? Because they have a what happens now thing here.
Yeah, and unless Detour pulls in money, which it's not going to do. It's a game that costs less than $1. Um, it's I don't see them getting funding. I honestly don't. I don't know where Sandswept goes from here.
They say that they're trying to move on to something new, but they don't say exactly what. A new multiplayer game, which they will announce later. But what are they? How are they going to fund? Or maybe they're going to get funding through the government, or because I can't think of a single publisher that would put their wholehearted trust in Sandswept.
Yeah, and I don't see the consumers backing it again.
Yeah, if they put up a Kickstarter like, "Oh, give us more money," nobody's going to fund that. Come on.
So I just don't see where they go from here. I don't think that keeping the Sandswept name is a good idea. I don't think.
Well, he mentioned that in this blog post here on the final word, and he said that he was approached by a friend of his to just ditch Sandswept's name and just make a new company name, but keep his name under the radar. So basically, just like hiding his past, which again ties back into the whole admirability thing that he didn't do it and he
Yeah,
wants to
but
own up to his mistakes, but yeah, he's sort of screwing himself.
like I just don't see him advancing in a video game field after this.
Maybe if the team like splits and then joins other companies, but I'm not sure again.
Like he needs, they're going to need something. Like they're going to need to be on a project or something that they're not paying for that they can kind of get money from, and because I just don't see them getting money any other way.
Hmm.
So I don't know what they're going to do going forward. I don't. It's a shitty situation to see a company bank on the consumer's dime and on a game that's not done, and try to make it with just that, and it didn't work, and it was a promising concept, but
I guess honestly, we're just gonna have to see where they go from here.
you know, and hope that it's not into 9 to 5 day jobs,
Yeah,
because
that's true.
I don't think that we need less developers out there.
Especially developers who are so transparent about their fuck ups in the past and
Yeah.
don't want to just hide away stuff.
I mean, I would like them to stay in the industry. So, but God,
Maybe they'll take their experience because they said in the blog post as well, their final blog post, that now that they have, a quote from their expertise in Unreal Engine 4, which I'm not entirely sure if how expertise they are, but hopefully they can take that and move on to different projects and
yeah.
maybe do something with that.
But another problem I see is like there's so much shit about them. There's so much like from the staff members who left saying like making damning allegations just from the
Oh, yeah.
whole taste of the situation in some people's mouths. Like that's so much bad press. Like I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna get trusted in the industry. I don't know if they're gonna get trusted on the consumer level. It's just
Oh, they probably won't.
it's a shitty situation. If they can come back and make a game and it can at least be semi hit, then they'll be golden. But it's looking bleak.
They shot too high and they failed miserably.
Fucking Icarus.
Exactly.
I think that this is kind of a shitty situation for the genre too, because like not only is this
Come on, the genre was already in like a shitty spot before this.
yeah, but this was kind of like saying, okay, we're going to take the genre and move it more towards co-op, move it more towards this avenue that hasn't really been seen.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like it was going to expand on this genre that's been very, very linear and just full of copycats, and it died. It died hard. So it's like it's just going to be kind of like, well, why the fuck would I go down this other road whenever I can just make a copycat of DayZ and I can get a bunch of money? And they hinted on that in the blog post. Like, so I feel like this is kind of a major blow to that genre. And I don't know, it just sucks.
Yeah, I always thought that this game was going to turn out to be, what is that one like single player zombie survival game?
State of Decay.
State of Decay, that's what it is. Yep. I always thought the Dead Linger was going to be like that, but co-op and more
Fun.
refined and stuff. Yeah, and fun, because that State of Decay is pretty damn broken.
Oh,
And then
it was alright. I mean,
they have game-breaking bugs, so they fixed. They put out a patch and updated the textures, but they sold it for $20.
yeah, I don't know. That was a little bit shady.
Yeah, it is.
But I don't know. This just sucks. This sucks in every way. It's hard to like really be like God, but I don't know. It's hard to get this kind of in a sentence structure that makes sense. But like I feel like this is a big blow to that genre, because I feel like this is just kind of saying don't be original with it. Just copy DayZ. That's the easy way to make money.
Or at least like manage your money better, right?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they did, and I'm kind of just I've been on the fence with this, where I've just kind of thought they were just fucking retarded. Because how do you screw up whenever you know how much money you have? But then it's like, well, they're also incompetent. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't know what they were doing, and that's the big issue.
I think it is the engine changes that sort of screwed them. I think it was the procedural generation and the engine changes that screwed them.
I would agree. I would agree.
Those were the two big, like, nails in the coffin.
But unfortunately, the procedural generation was like the one of the big selling points in the game.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who were upset about that.
Yeah, so that sucked. I don't know, man. What do you want to leave off with?
I don't know. I don't think there's too much else to say. I guess I feel bad for Sandswept Studios. This is kind of shitty that the Dead Linger is dead, or confirmed to be on indefinite hiatus, which is basically you're never going to hear from it again. But I'm glad they put it open source so people can maybe develop upon it. I like that they have Steam Workshop on it. I like that they pulled it off of the page and aren't selling it while it's not being developed. I like that he's owning up to the fact that he fucked up, and I hope he can do better in the future. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to support anything he does until it's fully released.
If we had the kind of pull to kind of be like, hey, other video game developers or aspiring video game developers, listen up. I would say don't take a giant project that that you can't handle.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Know your limits.
Yeah, and don't try to, I don't know, don't jump into the industry like that fast. I'm sure that they could have worked under people a little bit more and got some more experience before trying this.
Well, they went from Detour to making the Dead Linger, which was a huge undertaking. Kind of like Kingdom of Alamur, that RPG game.
I liked that game.
Yeah, I know. I think, but the development team, hardcore went into that and then went bankrupt. I'm pretty sure after that.
Oh yeah, I think they did.
So
Um,
it sucks, but the game industry is just that way. You make a game, you pour millions of dollars into it, and all of your time. Half the time it fails.
but I don't know what their resume was before they made Sandswept. I don't know if they've worked other jobs like in the video game industry or not, but it's clear that they did not have enough experience, and they should have spent like 2 more years working for someone else before starting this.
Well, hopefully they'll learn.
And for the consumers, well, just check. Don't do what we did and actually check who's making it and be like, well, they can't. This is too much. They can't do it.
Yeah, I think that was the main point of making this video, right? Was just to try to hammer home the point of be cautious about early access and green light.
Which is a thing we've been preaching so much.
Exactly. And like watch update videos about how the game is coming along if you're interested and see how far it is. Because if you look back at my videos on the Dead Linger, it didn't change like at all in the whole like year and a half that I was making videos.
And we started talking about it like, what, half a year in? We were kind of like, this isn't going anywhere. What's going on? And that was like the first engine change. We were like, okay, cool, they're making an engine change. But then it's like nothing's changing after the engine change. We got
It's because they like immediately put on another engine change.
we got real discouraged. And we kind of called it. We were like, this game's not going to go anywhere. And it didn't. So
I was hopeful, but yep.
it sucked. So yeah, I think that if you can watch update videos of games, certainly do that. Check out what's going on and just be careful with your money because, I mean, you don't got enough.
Do your research.
And don't be sad like us. Fuck.